if you haven't already, you need to make sure you get your entry in for the Fraternity of Girth and Throw Bros Pandemic Games. So it's running through May 18th. All of you out there that bought a shirt, all of you that wanted to participate, make sure that you're getting videos and you post on Instagram and or Facebook. You post your throws, you tag Fraternity of Girth, you tag Throw Bros. Don't need to hashtag it. No hashtags necessary. Just tag us in that. You do as many events as you want to. You can do all of them. You can do one of them. Whatever you want to do, get your entry out there. Make sure you wear your shirt. Include your distance. Include your class. Can be just you practicing. Can be you with your buddies. Keeping social distance, of course. Or can just be you by yourself. Whatever you want to do. Prizes are going out to the event winner. There's not like an overall winner. It's not like an actual sport. Well, we're used to that, right? Event winners. And then we're also going to have awards for the best foul and the best name. The best name, whether it's your personal name or whether it's for the name of your games. We'll see. We'll decide which one is the silliest. If you are social media challenged, you can also email your videos to pandemicseries@fogapparel.com. Speaking of fogapparel.com, get some of the best strength sports clothes that exist. Use code HEAVYLIGHT. You're going to save 10%. Get your entries in. We want to see these throws. We want to see this stuff. Don't wait till the last minute. Get them in May 18th. I have in my possession a book from 2012. It's I'm not really sure what the title is. It's Highland Games Highlights 2012. I'm just going to read every word on the book. This is a book compiled by Francis Brebner, I assume. Hey, I did not realize this. I have it's an autograph copy. 2012. How did I end up with this? I'm not sure. But I'm going to read all the words on the title. Athletes, History, Events, IHGF, Scottish Stonelifting, World Records, Results, Action Pictures, World Championships, European Championships, Lightweight Worlds, World Caber Tossing Championships, Highland Games, Highlights 2012. And it's got some art of a guy turning a caber on the front with some very, very wiry beef jerky-like muscles. That's the artistic choice there. So I was just thumbing through this. Apparently, I think I either got this as part of a prize pack or something like that, but that doesn't explain why there's an epigraph to me. Is that the right word, epigraph, when someone signs a book for you? I think it is, right? Somebody look that up. But yeah, to Mike, best wishes, Francis Brebner. So, I don't want to tease too much because obviously the book was personalized for me. It's a bit of it's a ragtag collection. What it is Francis he writes for the Iron Mine website and he writes these wrap-ups of games. And I think he just published a lot of those along with an intro and everything. I mean, this is like, it's a 212-page book, so there's a lot going on. Oh, Matt Vincent, world champion. There we go. Picture of him right there. But yeah, it's kind of a roundup of that sort of stuff. But, I mean, look, this is, for our sport, I'm not expecting Time Magazine here. But hey, good on Francis. He did all this writing. I mean, he wrote thousands and thousands of words here. So, as much as I may want to tease about formatting, all that kind of stuff, whatever, man. The guy put out content in a way that he knows how before there was YouTube. So, good on him, man. He and I may not see eye to eye on what's best for the game and how it's going to be run, all that kind of stuff. But, he puts out a lot of stuff. He worked. So I'm always going to respect work. But what it got me thinking of, looking at, I could go through this book and just go down memory lane quite a bit, honestly. That's not what the original thought was, but as I'm looking through it. 2012 is like the second year that I was in the games. So I can't imagine how I could have won this. Don't know where I would have done it. Oh, there's Big Scotty Ryder. Who else is in? I'm just flipping through the random pages. Lots of pictures of Matt. This was the year he won Worlds, so yeah, he's going to be in here a lot. Also, the year one of the random pages I opened to, this was the year that Matzo threw a series over 60 at the Las Vegas Highland Games. That's huge. I think he fouled like a 63-foot or something like that. Oh, there's Zolk with all the long, beautiful flowing hair. What's we got? Oh, there's Mark Howe. There he is. Is this Lightweight Worlds here? Yeah, there it is. So there's Torsten Hulsman, Jeff Thornton. I don't really see him around anymore. Mark Howe, still getting after it. Who won this? Who won? Scott Farr raked in some vital points with a superb winning height of 28 in the sheaf. Overall top 10. Jeff Thornton, number 1, Jacob Nickel, 2, Mark Howe, 3, Scott Farr, 4, Phil Sansada, 5. And on and on. Torsten, 6, Martin Kuhn, 7, Luke Lomsdalen, Luke, number 8, Brandon Chisholm, and Jason Von Guinness. He used to be a lightweight. I forgot about that. He had a brief stint in the lightweight class. I remember that when he was a younger, slimmer man. Anyway, like I said, I could go down memory lane on a lot of this stuff. And people, there's athlete profiles, all that kind of stuff. But in looking across it and seeing, like, the pictures, a lot of the, the bigger, more well-known pros and the top people and stuff, and then contrasting that with the earlier parts about, he kind of goes into the cultural background, which even, Francis admits is some of it's a little bit specious. These are some of the legendary things. I've gone into this in other media before about, that it's a little dodgy when you talk about the history of the games and what they actually are, and it's not till the early 20th century with Count de Coubertin where we really kind of codify what the events are. But thinking about that, I thought about the different kinds of throwers and the different kinds of people that get into this sport. And I think for a long time, this definitely was, as I think Francis would attest, this was a Scottish thing. This was Scotland's thing. This was, after having bouts and periods where they were, one particular period where they were told not to display their culture, or have gatherings that displayed Scottish culture and they couldn't carry weapons, stuff like that. I think they were more than happy, to have that thing come back into vogue and have the ability to express their culture. And so it's definitely Scotland's thing, as evidenced by how it works in Scotland. A lot of small towns have their games. It's a very local thing. People come out to the park, to the central square, whatever it may be, and they throw whatever's on hand. And these are they're half carnival, half Highland Games event. So that's, it's definitely a Scottish thing, and I think that's been it for a long time. But I think somewhere along the line, like the later half of the 20th century, it started spreading to the U.S. It started predominantly to North America, to the U.S. That's where it kind of got most of its shine, and then very late in the century, kind of into more of Europe. So the U.S. version of it is obviously the one with which I'm most acquainted, but when it became more than just a Scottish heritage thing, when people that aren't, Scottish by birth, or that don't actually live in Scotland or in the British Isles even, that live in, that were born and raised in the U.S. or anywhere else, you start to run across different motivations and reasons for getting into the games, right? You run across, all the types we're going to go through here. So I think you do have a certain amount of people, and this was probably in the early days, I'd imagine, a lot of people that are of Scottish descent and want to celebrate that culture, that heritage. I mean, look, we wear kilts when we throw. Those kilts are going to bear a tartan. That's the style. That's the fashion. That's what that clothing is for. And, you carry that tartan as sort of a family recognition or something that you want to be aligned with. And, we have all these different tartans now. I was just looking through Sport Kilt's website, and, you have the police and fire tartans, U.S. military tartans, all these things that are kind of been custom made. But, those are a later invention. Those are a late 20th century invention or early 21st century invention. These used to be kind of calling cards for your clan or the clans that you were allied with. And, so I think the early people that came to the sport outside of people in Scotland proper, there were people that were into the heritage. They were, we have a big part of the festival tradition here for those that are new or just not in the know is, Scottish festivals, in particular, Scottish and Celtic festivals don't just materialize out of thin air. Nobody just thinks hey, let's find a way to serve beer and turkey legs and have people throw stuff. There are active clans, and the clans basically operate as nationwide or sometimes worldwide clubs. They're worldwide, generally speaking. But, there'll be chapters that operate in different countries, different states. And these clans are in charge of keeping the keepers of the flame for their particular clan. My wife's clan Henderson, who's, that's her maiden name, whose tartan that I carry. I'll get into this. We weren't really into any of this stuff at all, but, just knowing that she had a Scottish last name and I did not, I thought that was a neat kind of tribute to her side of the family. But, there's so a clan like Clan Henderson will have these chapters. And if the chapter is, in contact with other chapters of other clans that are in that area, then they're going to maybe organize and have get-togethers. And those get-togethers can sometimes grow by leaps and bounds, or having connections, or having money and fundraising involved. That, you get a pipe competition, or you'll get a dance competition, or you'll eventually start bringing food vendors, and you'll start charging entry for the general public so they can come appreciate the culture and be part of the gathering too. And then along with that, you can get athletics added to it. That's generally how these things go. Now, sometimes they're not so like grassroots. Sometimes there's a big plan, like to go in and just make a big festival out of it. Sometimes those things are not grown from small shoots. They're just kind of, not astroturfed is the right word, but they're just planted and made. I've been, part of the process of creating a festival out of nothing, it kind of creating out of thin air. And like, sometimes you just have the funding, sometimes you just have corporate sponsorship, sometimes you have private money, all sorts of different things. So a lot of these clans form nonprofit groups as well that they can fundraise for these festivals and these gatherings for. So that's a big part of it. And you have to understand that the people that are organizing that are up very into Scottish culture, because obviously they're operating and doing work on behalf of a clan, on behalf of one of these clubs, basically. And, like you look at the Caledonian Club in, I think, San Francisco. Like, that's a conglomerate, basically, I would imagine, of a bunch of different clans that have come together to keep this festival running, and that's a nonprofit organization. There's a lot of these. So they fundraise on that behalf, and to do all that work, you got to be really into this shit, man. Like, you got to live and breathe this a little bit, and this has to be something that you're proud of, that you wear on, as a badge on your chest or a kilt on your waist, that something that you're proud of and something you want to be involved in. And in the course of that, as these events grow, you might want to participate. You may want to take up drumming. You may want to take up piping. You may want to take up dancing. You may want to take up the athletics. And I think that was kind of the original idea, was that this was kind of a competition between the clans. Now, I think where we get to the sort of expansion that we have nowadays, if I just take our particular sport, our thing, to take our little thing, that, if it's a competition between clans, you can kind of see the natural progression that, well, okay, maybe we charge an entry fee just to take care of expenses, to pay the athletic director, the person who's got all this weird gear and everything like that. And then as the festival grows, if you open it up to the general public or people that are outside the clans, then, hey, that's more money coming in and more entertainment, right? It's a big festival. You can kind of see the natural progression from there. But those early people were probably really, really into Scottish culture, and more about the history and more about the cultural heritage than they were just the sport. Now, in the course of doing that, though, later half of the 20th century, I think you start to get more people as strength sports become more well-known, as, things like powerlifting from the 60s on, 60s and 70s becomes much bigger. And you have strongman that comes into prominence in the 70s. And even involves some Scottish events. You just Google Kazmaier kilt. Like you're gonna see Kaz doing stuff in a kilt, and he competed in the Scottish Games too. So I think some of those things become in vogue and start attracting people that are kind of into strength, and people that are into test of strength and are into these other sports, and that brings in a whole new collection of people. And I think you can. I don't want to just fast forward to it, but you can sort of fast forward to where as other strength sports grow and interest in them kind of develops, I think you have that type of person still that comes into the sport. So I think you still have, to this day, I think you still have the heritage people. And I think they make up a bigger portion than I think a lot of people realize, that this is a cool thing for somebody that may be athletic and they may lift and they may be into strength, or even not, but they're just getting in touch with something from their cultural heritage. I've thrown alongside a lot of people who you wouldn't characterize as strong, you wouldn't characterize as athletic, but they want to go out and they want to do the thing that's attached to their culture. I think that's fucking cool. I probably went through a lot of years where I kind of sniggered and teased and stuff like that about people that had no athletic ability doing it. But as I lived in this culture a little bit longer, I realized, like, hey, that's, because I went through my own thing of finding my own roots, finding my own ancestry, finding my own family story, that, I can now appreciate somebody that's trying to take that same journey, that's trying to reconnect with something with their culture, to not feel like they're just like they're not just a modern American, that they have some sort of that they're that, and in particular for Caucasian folks like myself to not be stuck in that just you're the default culture, which I could go a long time on a rant about that is unfortunate that, the U.S. has somehow convinced itself that, Caucasian culture is the default. But, you sort of get this idea because you see all these interesting things from other cultures and these fascinating practices and things like that. And you kind of long for that. And I think it's, the Scottish Games is kind of rife with that. There's a lot of people that are looking for something that's unique to their European culture. And they want to find something to connect to back to that. And I think it's a cool way to do that. I got no fault in anybody that does that, and even if they don't have designs on getting to the A class or being a pro, whatever, they just want to do the thing connected to their culture. They're still here and they're a big component of it. And, they pay their entry fees and they put on a show as best they can, I hope most times. So good on them. And then I think you still have, and stronger than ever, you have that vein of strength athlete now. You have a lot of power lifters. You have a lot of strongmen athletes. You have a lot of people from the world of strength generally, or just sometimes they can just be gym bros and girls. There's people that love to lift and they don't have a track and field background, and they come to this and they just, hey, this is a way to test my strength and a way to do something fun that's in a different environment that I'm used to. It's not powerlifting in a Holiday Inn ballroom. It's not strongman in a pizza store parking lot. It's, I get to be in front of a festival, in front of a crowd with cool music on grass with real implements. It's fun. So I think that is a strong vein in the sport now. I think that is probably, if we're honest, I think that's probably the biggest ball. I mean, that describes me. I'm not a strength athlete, as it were. I dabbled in powerlifting and strongman. I've said many times I wasn't strong, so those didn't work very well. But I turned to the Highland Games, and it suited me. It worked. And thank God that the lightweight class came into prominence, and it was blah, blah, blah. But I think that makes up the bulk of the people we're seeing and the bulk of the social media presence that you're seeing for the Highland Games now. I think that excitement, that amount of engagement that you get from those strength sports, I think that's carried over, and that leads to the amount of participation we have now. Now, the third one is also, I'm not going to say it's a completely modern or the latest one. That's always been a thread, but it's really, really come to prominence in the time since I've been in the games and maybe the decade prior. And that's track and field athletes coming to the games. Now, like I said, there's always been a thread of track and field athletes. Vieira, obviously. I'm sure there's better examples. I'm just blanking out right now. There's plenty of people with at least some track and field background at a collegiate level. And when I say track and field athletes, I really am saying collegiate because I think that's a level that changes you. I've thrown alongside a lot of people that threw in high school and stuff like that, but most people that are very good in high school go on to throw in college, and most people that just kind of do it in high school just kind of do it. And, no knock on them. They're better technically than I am, most likely, but it's not like they're going to immediately excel. But the collegiate level track and field athlete is something that has come much more to prominence, like I said, in the last decade or two. And nowadays, the top of the amateur class and the majority of the pro class is populated by these people, both pro men and women. And now even more so, more happening in the lightweight class and the other classes. Master's classes, obviously, you're seeing some of those people age into that as well, so you're seeing them there. But that track and field athlete, the attraction wasn't always there. You had Brian Oldfeld way back that was, smashing big open stone records and claiming that he threw at 80 at some point. You have that. That thread's always been there, but the number has been low, I think, until you sort of got the wave of you always had the heritage people, and then you got this sort of bolus of strength sports enthusiasts that found the games and started posting about it on social media. And, and again, I know I just spent so much time and I talked to the guy so much, it's hard not to think in these terms, but there's nobody really better that kind of typifies two of those types of athletes than Matt Vincent. And, he was a strength athlete. He came out of being a throwing athlete, but he went into being a power lifter and a strongman. And I think he took a lot of that enthusiasm and a lot of that exposure mentality and a lot of that kind of selling yourself as an athlete mentality into the Highland Games. And he's just he's kind of the poster child for that wave of people. So that big bolus of strength athletes brought enough notoriety and kind of shined a spotlight on the fact that, hey, you can get paid for doing this. that I think a lot of track and field athletes started taking notice. People that maybe had just kind of topped out in college, or that have tried to throw as a pro track and field athlete, or tried to make, that were trying to work their way up the Olympic pipeline, and people that kind of fall out before they get to there. Track and field is one of these sports, like a lot of collegiate sports, but even more so because there's really not a well-established pro level, especially for throwers. It's not a highly populated sport at the pro level, and there's not as many opportunities. It's an opportunity for them to continue to throw outside of the confines of college. Because if you're just pretty good, there really aren't any places for you to go throw that often anymore. And if you love throwing, which you have to, I hope you did if you did it that long in college, then you probably like, and I'm now paraphrasing from kind of all the track and field athletes that I know, and there's a lot now, that it's really just throwing for the love of throwing is what they get out of the Highland Games. It's throwing without all the NCAA bullshit. It's throwing without all the bullshit that goes along with being part of a team and, dealing with meets and dealing with all the politics and everything that go into it. It's just getting to throw. And yes, it's throwing heavy shit and weird shit, but some adapt, most adapt, some don't. But it's a chance to just throw and have fun again, which I think a lot of throwers, the kind of creatures they are, collegiate or not, they get a lot of joy out of the act of throwing and the satisfaction of releasing the satisfaction of release. They get a lot of satisfaction out of that, and I think the Highland Games offers an opportunity for track and field athletes to just get back to doing what they love, which is being athletes and throwing. And then maybe you win a trophy, maybe you don't. And to be perfectly honest, coming in with a good track and field background kind of guarantees that you're not going to suck. Now, eventually, but you're not going to suck as bad at things like stones, at things like weight for distance and the hammer if you've handled those things before. The 56 makes an asshole out of everybody the first couple of times, so don't get it twisted. Everybody looks like an asshole at that thing, but track and field athletes tend to look like less of an asshole because at least they know where they're supposed to end up to throw something. And then, caber and sheaf are the main ones. Other ones that kind of fuck with track athletes a little bit. That's always the ones where if you have a new track athlete who's out throwing you everything else, you can just always wait until caber and sheaf, and you know that they're still working on figuring that out. But God help you when they do. Look at the Pirate Captain. Look at how well he's adapted, and now he's a world-class sheaf thrower. So that's gonna, they'll catch up. Don't worry. But I think, they're not going to immediately suck as much, and a lot of them are like, there's a decent contingent of them. We see them at the top of the AMs every year that, you could say that out of that, let's say the top 10 amateurs, or the top 20 amateurs, probably 10 of them are ex-track and field athletes, right? And then at least one or two of those, you're probably just going to be, as long as they keep competing, we're just going to say hi to them in the amateur class and kind of pat them on the butt on the way up to the pros. That's it. I'm not saying it's an immediate pass to the pros, but it sort of is if you dedicate yourself to a little bit and you remain reasonably strong and athletic and you throw and you really care about doing it, you can get, and that tends to be the case. Of course, there are exceptions, and some people, they just kind of fall out of love with the Highland Games, or as we discussed with like Jeff Milliron and plenty of other people that I can call out, but he's already been called out on the podcast. But some people just don't mentally adapt to the environment, the atmosphere of the Highland Games as well. They don't adapt from that NCAA, track meet mentality. They never really shed that. They don't mature into the, hey, we're just here for fun, chill out. Like, we're going to be drunk by the last two events, and literally nobody cares how you throw. I've written a song about that, right? Some people don't adjust to it. And look, there's plenty of people from the other types of athletes don't adjust to that either. I'm looking at you, strongman competitors, by the way. Some of y'all, I'm sorry, but that is some of the biggest wasted intensity I've ever seen at a Highland Games, like screaming and getting all fired up and popping ammonia caps to take fifth place in an event. Like, it's strange to me. Like, it's not all strongmen, hashtag not all strongmen, but sometimes there's just a current of anger in their way of competing that, is hilarious. So it's not just some track and field athletes, obviously. But yeah, you have to, back to the track and field athletes, you do have to just kind of accept the fact that they've got a better foundation. They've got hundreds, if not thousands of hours of professional coaching and footwork and conditioning and preparation, mental preparation, structured weight room training that you're never going to get. Like somebody like me is never going to get. I fenced in college. My footwork in fencing is not bad because I did hundreds or thousands of hours of footwork and target work and everything like that and tactical work. That doesn't exactly translate. But I'm not going to ever have, until I've done Highland Games for 15 total years, I'm never going to have even close to the base that they have in doing that. Now, for me, the benefit has been, and for some other throwers as well, is because I've learned as an adult, because I didn't learn it in my 20s as a dumb kid and when I was like 19 or 22 years old. I learned this as an adult, and I was able to absorb a lot more, a lot easier without having it hammered into my head so much, without just having it beaten into my head and with nobody bothering to explain why to me. And that's why I kind of discovered this love of coaching, this love of training throwers, is because I really, really understood, I hate to say theoretical, but like the practical hands-on side of why we do things the way that we do and what things work and what things don't, through some trial and error and through some just being an adult and being able to actually figure out problems instead of just hammering away at them till you get something looking like a solution. So, there is a path for us all to get to that level, but you have to look, and yes, are there exceptions? Are there pro athletes that have been near the top that aren't track and field athletes? Abso-fucking-lutely they are. The last one, the biggest one that comes to mind for me, just because I knew him personally, like he's dead. I know him personally, but he doesn't throw anymore. Jake Sullivan, he really was. He was like a power lifter, kind of a gym bro. And he just put his mind to learning to throw and being a professional Highland Games athlete. And by God, he did it. So he's a great example. And he's a fantastic coach for just that reason. Like he was we used to chat all the time about throwing technique. I studied his hammers, the way that he approached hammers and everything. And he had that mind for it. So I think that comes out of it. Again, my partner in Throw Bros, my partner in life, Aaron George, he's had no throwing background. No, none at all. And now he's a pro athlete. And, he's got that same thing. He's really had to live in it mentally because there is no coaching program. There is no Highland Games program at a college or in high school. There's no program for it. You have to be your own source of discipline and structure. And that's surely an adult thing. And thus why I think Highland Games, just because also it's, there's no college version of it, but I think it's an older person's sport. I think it's a sport for your 30s. I think it requires, to get pretty good at it, you have to be disciplined and be able to put yourself through practices. And some track and field athletes have that naturally, and they'll come to the Highland Games and it'll translate just fine. Spencer, Matt, Andy, Dan, these are all guys that just have that discipline and they go out and throw. They have that obsession. Some people just are happy to not have any structured practice anymore and just want to go throw and dick around, even if were really good track and field throwers. I don't blame them. I mean, why? Maybe they don't want to learn the fucking caber. At this point in my life, I can't blame anybody for saying, fuck that thing. I'll just go try to pick it 3 times and look like an asshole. I've gone into many a games with that philosophy, my friends. I'll just pick it 3 times and give it my best shot, and then just whatever. I'll look like an asshole. I'll lose that one and just go do the stuff that I like to do. There was quite a period of that. And you know what? There was I've talked about him before, Zach Church, my buddy. He can attest to this. He was the first person that kind of mentioned this to me. He's like, after a certain point in my career, I could pick any caber on the planet. I just couldn't turn most of them. I say that, and then I went to the Arnold this last time, and I basically missed a pick for the first time in God knows how long. So it's probably because I've said that too many times. But yeah, you have to understand that there's going to be also, just like there are people in the cultural heritage group, just like there are people in the strongman powerlifting group, there are going to be people in the track and field group that just want to show up and they just want to fucking throw. They just want to dick around and throw. You know what the one thing in common in all 3 of those groups is? Everybody doing it is more comfortable wearing sport kilt. Everybody. No matter what your background, no matter where you came from throwing, you're going to want to get a sport kilt. A sport killed, when anybody comes to the sport brand new and they're like, oh, what do I need to get? I almost did like a dumb voice for a new person, but I avoided it. Oh, what do you get? But what do I need to get? I tell them first thing, if you're going to compete, go to sport kilt. Get a sport kilt. They're the best in the business. They're lightweight. They're breathable. They're comfortable. They look good. You can get features on them, and you can also get socks. You can also get kilt flashes if you're into that. You can get all the stuff you want. You can get and here's the tie-in. If you're one of the cultural heritage people, they have all the stuff that you can do to be culturally on point, to be heritage on point, to look the part. If you really want to do like the dress up, more costume part of this, go for it. They got it all there. But if you're just a meathead that wants to throw and get the kilt, also get sport kilt. That's the best one. If you're new to the games, if you got to re-up, if you got to get new stuff, go to sportkilt.com, use code HEAVYLIGHT. You're going to save 10%. You will thank me. So let's think future. The future. Let's think, where does it go from here? I mean, everything's going to follow the money, right? So if we kind of stay at the level that we're at, this year's weird, and who knows how that's going to change the landscape, by the way. Sidebar, that, some festivals may not survive this COVID-19 thing with not being able to have a year. I've said before, all it takes is one bad year sometimes to kill a festival. So it's going to change the landscape a little bit. Will more and more high-level track and field athletes, collegiate track and field athletes, will they come to the sport? Because, you listen to somebody like a few episodes back, we talked to Dan Tennyson, who was a collegiate track and field athlete and then a power lifter after. He said, if I would have known about it at 24 years old, I would have been doing it since then. So you got to understand, somebody that lived and breathed throwing in college did not know about the Highland Games or like had any real understanding that it was available to him until he was in his 30s. So it's still not as widespread in the world of throwing as we'd like to think. A lot of times it's honestly, the people that I see very often come out to try it out are throws coaches. Shout out to Matt Adams. These are people that they do kind of live and breathe throwing, but they don't compete anymore. And for throws coaches, the Highland Games is a way to get out and compete still. It's kind of fun, right? But it's not as widespread, but I think it's catching on more and more because you got people like Colin Dunbar coming to the sport. You got Gary Randolph. You got people that are pretty legit, hammer throwers or whatever, discipline they may be in. I mean, shot put's a weird animal because if you're a really good shot putter in the U.S., you don't care about the Highland Games at all because this is like the hardest country in the world to be an elite shot putter in. So, you don't care. But, I mean, let's say, Joe Kovacs or Reese decides to come throw in a Highland Games. They'll do okay. They'll do all right. But is it worth their time? That's what it comes down to. I think right now, no, it's not. I think, and you also have to understand that as good as those guys are, they would have to spend a season or two losing to Spencer Tyler and guys at the top of the game just because this is their sport. There's 9 events and they know them all a lot better. Would Reese win in stones? Yeah. Every time, forever. He'd start winning in weights, to start winning in hammers, eventually, come around. But, that's fun to play like, fantasy what if. But so where does it track from here? I think you will continue to see an influx of strength sports people moving pretty steadily. I don't think it's going to increase astronomically. I think you're going to continue to see that because, the strength sports community, it kind of encompasses all types of people, takes all kinds. And I think some of those people are just going to naturally gravitate to a more relaxed environment, something that's not as static and something that's not as, sorry to powerlifting, but as repetitive, something where they can mix it up and things can be a little crazy. Our lack of standardization is a real attraction to some people. As much as we bemoan it, I think throwing a different stone, different weight, different hammer, different sheath everywhere you go is actually attractive to some people, and they like the variety of it. They like the winning what's on the field that day mentality of it. I kind of do too. I've learned to appreciate it a lot more. I used to bitch and moan why can't everybody have a 16-pound stone? And I still do a little bit. But, I get it. It's part of the tradition of the sport. And I think you're always going to have a contingent of strength sports, meathead people that come to the games, and they appreciate that part of it. The cultural heritage people, I think, are going away. I've talked about that previously when we talk about the fate of festivals. I think those people are waning, and I think they're aging. And I think there's not as much enthusiasm for those clans, for those chapters, and for organizing festivals and participating in the cultural heritage as much. I'm saying this from my experience as an athlete. I don't see them out there as much. I see about the same number of strength sports people, and I see a lot more track and field people. It's becoming more and more common. But it's not just the top level like I'm talking about. I'm seeing more levels of track and field. Like I'm seeing people that, through in D2, D3, or that just threw in high school really well. But people that have some throwing background are becoming aware of this. I think that's where the future's headed. I think you're always going to have a blend in this sport until some real money hits the table. And I've talked at length. It probably never will. But let's, for argument's sake, say it does. If all of a sudden you can supplement your income by $50,000 to $100,000 a year by throwing in, 10 Highland Games, then you're going to see real athletes show up. And I'm not saying we don't have real athletes. I'm not saying that. But I mean fucking real athletes. Like the best. You're going to see people that, once they kind of age out or whatever else burn out of their sport, but they can still move. They still have the ability for the most part. They're going to come here and they're going to clean up. It's happening a little bit. It's happening slowly and we don't realize it because the average level, and I feel like we said this when I sat down with Aaron in Ohio, that it might not be that like the very tippy top is getting better and more track and fieldy. It's that the overall average bar or like the bottom is being raised. The bottom of what it takes to be an A, the bottom of what it takes to be a pro is being slowly raised. And I think you're seeing that, like the thing that we were talking about, like, me, a lightweight, a nobody, throwing 30 and 60 in the weights, and I have for years and years, that would have probably been enough in the 80s to just say, oh, yeah, you're a pro. It's fine. You're an anomaly. You're enough. But we've seen that ceiling raised, but I think it goes to variation as well. I think now, 35-70 was kind of the telltale when I first started in the games. That's the bare minimum. The weights is always like a nice bellwether, I guess, because that shows some ability. Like I've said, it's very technical. It's the most technical. So if you can consistently do 35-70 in the days when I came into the sport, that was like, you're probably ready for the pros. Now it's closer to 40-80. And not to just enter the pros, because you can enter the pros depending on your region, because they're going to need pros. But you can, to be in the talks, to be in the hunt for the big games, it's 40-80 is starting to be pretty in that neighborhood, like, 38-78, somewhere in it's getting to be pretty common. So I think you're seeing now the bar slowly being raised. And I think we have that big outlier. Well, I mean, he's a less big outlier now. He's lost a lot of weight. But Spencer Tyler at the top, kind of pushing those records that way. But that's what happens. A generational athlete comes along like that, and they dominate and they dominate and they dominate. And then all of a sudden, it takes time for the rest of the group to kind of catch up to it. I mean, look at Ronda Rousey, right? She just laid waste to the bantamweight division in women's MMA. Laid waste to them. Most successful women's champion ever. Superstar. But slowly but surely, when you have a dominant champion like that, the class or whoever the competition starts to catch up slowly, because everybody is watching film and learning how to do what they do from that person that's dominating. And they're all training to beat them. So right now, everybody's training to beat Spencer. Like everybody's modifying the way they throw. They're thinking about throwing differently because they know the bar is so high that if they're ever going to win or get in the conversation to be one of the greats or whatever their goals may be in this, just win money or just to have the most fun, whatever. But if they want to throw far, they've got to rethink the way they're doing it, and it will catch up. You always catch up to the outliers, and that means that the field on the average is going to move up. So you may see in 10 years, when I'm probably still doing this podcast, but too broken down to throw anymore, you're probably going to see in 10 years that if you want to be like a serious pro, you probably need to be like 48, 98, 50, 100, somewhere in there to like really be in the top 5. That would be fucking insane. And it may really happen. Like that may be really where we go. There's a limit to what human beings can do. I understand that. But humans are famously good at breaking that paradigm and continuing to go past those limits. But I think it's realistic that, and I think Aaron was kind of right in saying that the floor is moving more than the ceiling right now. I think he jokingly said he got into the pros just at the right time. And I think he really did, because I think it's going to get harder and harder. Plus, because of the social part that or the economic part, excuse me, that I think the money is getting thinner. I don't think there's more festivals with more money like opening up and saying like, hey, you know what we need? We need a fringe sport with pro athletes that we pay thousands to. Like, I don't think that's happening until Highland Games completes this possible transition into being more of an expo, and what am I trying to say? Like not just tied to Scottish festivals, not just tied to Celtic festivals. When we put ourselves in the same arena as the sports that Rogue is interested in, strongman, CrossFit, powerlifting, as soon as we get, and Olympic weightlifting to a certain degree, like, as soon as we move into, and we've talked about it many times, that the challenges logistically of our outdoor sport being that is tough. That presents a lot of challenges. But I think as that's the saving grace of the sport, as I've said on many an occasion, that, being more in line with those sports and our athletes being seen as the best in the world and on display. And in those scenarios, expos, fitness expos, indoor strength competitions, strength festivals, those sort of things, I think you have a better chance, because as long as we remain a festival sport, we're at the whims of whatever the cultural zeitgeist about Scottish or Celtic heritage is. And sometimes it's really high. Look, sometimes The Departed just came out and everybody's fucking high on figuring out their Celtic heritage, right? But other times, sometimes The Town comes out and people are like, I'm not that Irish. I don't know. The Town was pretty good. It had some good moments, right? I'm picking on it. Jeremy Renner was brilliant. I'll give him that much. But it's the only other movie I could think about that was like so incredibly Boston. You're so Boston in that movie. That's like they tried to like, hey, what were the parts in Good Will Hunting was the other one. I should have said that instead of The Departed. The Good Will Hunting comes out and everybody all of a sudden is Irish. It's like basically The Town was like, hey, those parts in Good Will Hunting where they were kind of like Boston Irish and thuggish and bad people, like, let's just do only that and see what it's like as a movie. So that's pretty much what you got. But you did get a really good Jeremy Renner performance. So way to go, Hawkeye. But it's as long as you're at the whim, or you're at the mercy of the whims of our society about how interested they are in Celtic festivals, it's going to be rough. And all it takes is one epidemic, right? Oh, it's pandemic. Sorry. All it takes is one pandemic to wipe out a year of them. And some of them aren't coming back. So it's on us. It's on us as a sport to figure out, if we want to attract like really way better athletes, but there's got to be more money. More money means better facilities. More money means more places to train. It probably means expanded pro rosters, all that kind of stuff. But we got to figure out where that's coming from, and we got to find a way for that to be bankable. So it's all like one big circle. It's like a snake eating itself. Like, which do you do first? You got to get the better athletes, but you got to pay them if you want them to be there. But if you want to pay them, you got to have more money available. If you need a structured settlement, if you have a structured settlement, you need cash now. So I wish I had the answers, but I don't. That's the end of the podcast. Heavy Light is brought to you by Throw Bros. Throw Bros is the only online store for Highland Games athletes. Gear up, get throwing. Use code HEAVYLIGHT, all one word. You're going to save 10% at throwbros.com.